So the first lesson in this course is on the metric system and the imperial system of measurement. Now, you may be familiar with the metric system. That's the system of measurement we use in Canada and most of the world. The imperial system of measurement is used in the United States quite a bit. So in the purposes of this course, we try to teach you both systems of measurement so that if you work, many people in Ontario may work with Americans, and they may have to be familiar with these other types of measurement. So that's why we teach this information. And just to kind of get you started on thinking about measurement, if you've ever considered why measurement came to be, it was because there was a need. Humans were building things, they were trying to sell things, and they were also growing foods. And as a way to kind of measure what they produced, what they sold, or what they needed to construct, units of measurement started to be developed. And at first these were informal, so things like arm lengths, hand lengths, or the space or the distance that somebody can travel in a day. Then these later started to become formalized because what humans ended up realizing was that if things are based on informal measurements in one area, though they might have other measurements in another area, and they wouldn't really convert very well. So when it comes to these two types of units of measurement, we'll first talk about the metric system. And the metric system, it uses a prefix and a suffix format. So the suffix, right, which is the later part of the word, or the end part of the word, those suffixes are our base units. And if you look at the table on the right, where the metric suffixes are listed, each unit measures a different property. So the one we use to measure distance or length is called the meter. The symbol is lowercase m, and it measures length. You can also have derived units. So a derived unit is a unit that's made up of other units. The unit for area and volume, for example, are meters squared and meters cubed. So literally, if you imagine 1 meter as a meter stick is your length, if you put a meter stick and place another meter stick that is perpendicular to that meter stick, you can cover a square area, which would be 1 meter square. And then if you then span that square meter up by 1 meter, you have 1 cubed meter, or a meter cubed. Now, another base unit that measures a different property, the property of mass, is the gram. So a gram itself is very small, which when we get into the sciences, we use the base as the kilogram, because a kilogram is a bit heavier of a measure. Time is also a property that needs to be measured, and the base unit for that is a second. And then we have some others that you might not come into contact in this course. Well, you won't, but I've listed them here just so that you're aware of them. The unit for power is the watt. The unit for force is the Newton. The unit for energy is the joule. The unit for electric current is the ampere. The unit for pressure is the Pascal, and the unit for luminous intensity is the lumen. There are other units as well. What I tried to do is list the base ones, right? Some other metric units, like the volt, they can be derived from other units like the ampere. So that you'll learn that if you take science courses after this one. Now the prefix is the start of the word. These denote what the order of magnitude of the unit is. So let's start in the middle. So we're looking at this table on the left. There's the metric prefix, and it says none. So if you just write a meter down, then what we're talking about is a meter, as in 1 meter of length, and we're basing our measurements off of that meter. So if I write down 5 meters, then that would be 5 meters of length. But if I put a, let's say I put a centi in front of it, so going 2 steps down, centi, or the lowercase c, it's of the order of 10 to the negative 2, which means we would divide by 100. And dividing by 100, if I'm talking about 5 centimeters, first thinking about 1 meter divided by 100 gives us a centimeter, because it takes 100 centimeters to make a meter. And then if I talk about 5 centimeters, I'm talking about 5 small little units that make up 5 100ths of a meter. Now the rest of these prefixes, I'll go through them in the top. The ones at the top and the bottom you won't experience as much, but they are good just to know. So giga, which is a capital G, is an order of 10 to the 9. Mega, which is the symbol has a capital M, is an order of 10 to the power of 6. So it's 1,000,000 times bigger than the base unit. And then one of the most common ones is the kilo, which is K. That's 1,000 times, or 10 to the 3 times larger than the base unit. Then we have hecto and deca. These ones you won't see very often, but a hecto is 10 to the power of 2, or 100 times bigger, and a deca is 10 times bigger. Then on the smaller side, we have a deci, which is 1/10 of the base unit. Centi is 1/100th of the base unit. Milli is 1,000th of the base unit. And then we have micro and nano. Micro, the symbol for micro is a Greek letter mu, and it is 1/1,000,000th of the base unit. And the symbol for nano is a lowercase n, and it is 10 to the negative 9 times the order of magnitude of the base unit. Now when we're converting between these units, we could just multiply by that order of magnitude. So the example that's given here, if we have 2.5 kilograms, and we want to multiply, or we want to turn that into grams, we have to multiply that by 10 to the power of 3. That gives us 250 grams. So I have a calculator on the side here. Let me just give you a quick little sample. Let's say I had, 50 milliseconds, and I wanted to convert that into seconds. So if this is 50 milliseconds, to convert into seconds, to go the other way, I have to actually divide. So I would divide this by 10 to the power of negative 3. And 50 milliseconds would be 50,000 seconds. So that's if you convert the other way. Now there's a step chart that you'll see on the next page, and this helps you understand if you're multiplying or dividing. So as you go from a smaller unit to a larger unit, we would divide. So that is the arrow on the top. And as we go down the step ladder, we go from a larger unit to a smaller unit, we multiply. So that's the metric system. Let's now talk about the imperial system of measurement. So with the imperial system, it doesn't rely on prefixes or suffixes. It just has base units. And those units have different ratios to convert to each other unit. So what this table does, it tries to explain these. We have the units of length, and these are just some of them, but these are the most common ones: the inch, the foot, the yard, and the mile. Their symbols are IN, FT, YD, and MI respectively. And if we are going to convert an inch to a foot, we would divide by 12 inches per foot. If we're converting a foot to a yard, we're dividing by 3 feet per yard. And if we're converting a yard into a mile, we're dividing by 1,760 yards per mile. So on the other side of that chart, the right side, we have the conversion to the smaller unit. So let's say we have, let's say I have 15 yards. 15 yards, and I want to convert this into feet. Well, there are 3 feet per yard. So I would do 15 yards multiplied by 3 feet per yard. That gives me 45 feet. The other measurements now we have for volume are the pint, the quart, and the gallon. Essentially we have 2 quarts for every pint, 4 quarts in every gallon. And using those simple kind of conversions, we can move between each of those. And then for mass, we have the pound and the smaller unit, which is the ounce. And there are 16 ounces per pound. One other thing to mention in terms of measurement, we have temperature. So temperature in Celsius, in the metric system, we typically use degrees Celsius to commonly state what the temperature is. In the Imperial System, we use degrees Fahrenheit. We won't need to know how to convert between that in this course, but it's worth, there is some questions on that that you'll see a bit later, just for practice. I won't be testing you on that. So now that we know the metric and the Imperial System, we need to figure out how to convert between one system and the other. So to convert between the metric and the Imperial System, we have to use a number of common ratios here. So for length, this table here lists some of the conversions between the metric system and the metric system, the Imperial System and the Imperial System, but it also has some for the Imperial System and the metric system. So let me highlight one for example. Over here we have 30.48 centimeters is equal to 1 foot. So using that idea, I can convert from centimeters to feet or feet to centimeters. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. 1 mile is 1.6 kilometers. So some of these are rounded values. If you use these values for your tests, then you'll be marked correctly. But you could also use the more accurate ones that you might find online. I think 1 mile is actually 1.58 something kilometers. Under volume, I have the main one is 1 gallon is equal to 3.785 liters. And for mass, the main one is 1 pound is equal to 0.454 kilograms, or 454 grams. So let's look at the example questions here. It says that we have a conference table. It is 325 centimeters, and I want to convert that into meters. Well, because the centimeter is smaller than a meter, I have to divide. So I divide by the order of magnitude, which is 100, and I get 3.25 meters. The next question says I have a jug that holds 10 quarts of liquid. It says, what is the volume in pints? So looking at my my conversion table, let's go back up to it. There are 2 quarts per pint. So I would have to multiply this by 2 quarts per pint, pints per quart, to get 20 pints. And then to convert between the metric and imperial systems, we have a 15-foot long car, and it says how long is that car in meters? Well, I have it in centimeters. I know that it is 30.48 centimeters. But I could also just change that to that 30.48 to meters by moving the decimal place twice or dividing that by 100. So the relationship I end up with is 0.3048 meters per foot. So if I multiply this by 0.3048 meters per foot, I end up with 4.572. And it did say to round to the nearest tenth of a meter. So I round up because that's a 7. And 7 is 5 or greater. So I would round this value up to a 6. So now I'll quickly work through these last few just so that you have some answers here. 56, so these are the support questions. So 5,600 meters into kilometers. I divide by 1,000 and I get 5.6. 84 centimeters to millimeters. I would multiply by 10 because I'm going from a larger to a smaller. 8 liters into milliliters, I would multiply by 1,000 to get 8,000. 2,700 grams into kilograms, I would divide by 1,000. 2.7 kilograms. For number 2, it says 6 pounds into ounces. So there are 16 ounces in a pound. So if I do 6 times 16, I end up with 96 ounces. 2.5 quarts into pints. So I'd have to multiply this by 2 pints per quart. I end up with 5 pints. 39 inches into feet. So if I divide the 39 by 12 feet or 12 inches per foot, I end up with 3.25 feet. And then 6 miles into yards. So there are 1,760 yards in a mile. So I end up with 10,560. And the last one, when I'm converting from metric to imperial, or imperial to metric, 27 inches into centimeters. So 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. So what I would do is I would divide this 27 inches by 2.54. Sorry, it's going to be the other way around. I have to multiply. It's 27 inches times 2.54 centimeters per inch. So 68.58. Now here it doesn't say to round it to the nearest tenth, but if I did, this would be 68.6. 75 kilometers into miles. So for every kilometer, or rather, it takes 1.6 kilometers to get to a mile. So if I divide this by 1.6 kilometers per mile, I end up with 46.875. 12 gallons into liters. And there are 3.875 liters in a gallon. Let me just quickly check that. 3.785 rather. So if I have 12 gallons and I multiply that by 3.785, so multiply by 3.785, I end up with 45.42 liters. And then 360 grams into ounces. I'll have to check this one because I'm not too familiar with it. 1 ounce is equal to 28.35 grams. So if I have 360 grams and I divide it by 28.35 grams per ounce, I end up with 12.7 about ounces.